back to the Endeavor podcast and video show. I'm Jason Breitkoff, one of the hosts. With me today is Dr. Wanda Montañez. Those of you who have been listening to the podcast will be familiar with Wanda, as she's been on for at least 2 episodes so far. But she's new to the video show. Wanda, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's Friday, so I guess it's the end of a long week.
A very long week.
I understand. And it's not just any old Friday, it's the Friday that for a lot of parents, students, families, teachers, it's SAT score report day. So the March SAT happened a few weeks ago, and score reports are starting to come out. We've been getting word from our students, our friends, that score reports are starting to go out, and paper ones will be following the online reports. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is SAT score reports. For those who are listening at home on the audio podcast and not watching the video show, I'm holding up a sample SAT score report. I downloaded this score report, this sample one, from the College Board website, where it's free to do so. They provide a sample report with a full explanation. But it's very wordy, and so we thought it would be a good idea to walk you through it. So if you've received either the score report online or a paper one, take a moment to pause the video or pause the audio podcast and go grab your report. Or if you're just listening while you're commuting, you can check it out at home. So, Wanda, we were talking before the show began. You're saying you haven't seen one of these in a while.
Yes, I haven't. I think the last one I saw was kind of old school on like the printed paper. Mm-hmm. So it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, they do send those out still.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they do send those out. And I'm currently not sure if colleges still get the paper one or they only get the digital one.
You mean high schools?
No, colleges, when students submit them
got
to
it.
colleges.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to any of my friends who work at colleges recently about that. So I should probably follow up on that. So basically, if you have in front of you, there's a lot of confusion about what all of this means. It's not just a simple score. There's a ton of information on these score reports, so I just want to kind of go through it with you and talk it out and see what's on here. So this sample one, if you download it from the website, the student's name is I'm a Good Student. The College Board, always that fountain of mature humor. I'm a Good. So I'm a Good took the SAT in May of 2017. And so they have all the personal information in the top right corner, the date of birth, the gender of the student, what high school the student went to, etc. So the first thing we see is, and hopefully if you're watching the video show, we've put up a copy of this so you can take a look at it. In the top left corner of the score report is the total score. So interestingly enough, before you even see the 2 separate section scores, you see the total score. So what do we see here, Wanda? What do we have?
Can I just kind of backtrack over to the right side where you kind of have some of this student information?
Sure.
One of the things that I wanted to highlight is the high school code. This code is something that students should know. Maybe just take a note of it, put it in your phone, put it in a notebook somewhere. Because this number, you're going to need it when you are applying for colleges. It's going to ask for it on your Common App. There is a way to look up your school on the Common App without the code, but if you have the code, it just makes it a lot easier.
That makes sense. That's a great point. Thank you. Again, you can see the difference between someone who's more of a test prep teacher versus someone who's more of a college counselor, different perspectives, which is why I wanted Wanda here to go over this with me, even though I'm probably going to end up doing more of the talking, because this is what I do for a job. So we've got the total score on the left. The total score on this particular sample for I'm a Good Student is 1010. And in your opinion as a college counselor, what does that score mean to you?
So I think when a student gets this report, that's probably the only thing that is really of interest to them. Mm-hmm. A 10-10 for me means that there's a lot of room for a student to do better on the test. A 10-10 really is lower than for sure some of the more competitive schools would want to see on your SATs. But I think that the 1010 also signifies that there are some strengths in some areas and some challenges in some areas.
You know what? I actually completely 100% agree with you there. The big thing that you said that for me as a teacher, both as a teacher who's worked in public schools and as a test prep instructor for the last 15, 20 years, is that room for growth. There's room for growth here, especially if this is the first time a student has taken the SAT, and especially if they haven't had any prep yet. They've taken this cold, there's so much room to grow. There's so much that they can brush up on, learn about study skills and test prep skills, and really improve and achieve their goals. So for those at home, the SAT is scored on a scale of 400 to 1600. And you may have heard that number, 1600, before, especially if you as a parent has taken the SAT back in the day. You might be, 1600, that's the best score or the perfect score. So what that means is that the median or middle score is around 1000. So this student, I'm a good student. I love that fake name. This student scored just a hair above the median, right in the middle of the pack. In fact, right beneath that, there are some percentiles. And the percentiles are confusing because they don't really mean very much. At least in my experience, colleges don't look at the percentiles.
No, not that I am aware of.
Right, they look at the score.
Right.
That's what they care about. Yeah. But the percentiles here is this student scored at the 50th percentile in the national representative sample percentile, but in the 36th percentile in the SAT user percentile. So I looked that up and I wanted to know, why are there two percentiles?
Yes.
And according to the College Board's website, the nationally representative sample percentile is based on what they'd expect from a series of independent studies that the College Board looked at that they didn't personally, they're not a person, it's a company,
right,
that they didn't author or pay for. They didn't sponsor. So these are independent studies by third-party scholars, organizations, schools, universities that say, based on their research, a student scoring 1010 should be in the middle. But according to the actual students who took the SAT on May 6, 2017, that 1010 is at the 36th percentile, meaning it's well below average.
What do you think is a better indicator for the student?
You know, I hesitate, like, again, this podcast, teachers are going to listen to it, school administrators, students are going to look at this on video or watch it, parents are going to watch it. So I'm going to talk about percentile just so they understand what it is on the report, but it's not important.
Yeah.
So I actually say, if you have the discipline, don't look at either. But they both are valuable. Basically, not every high school student takes the SAT. Mm-hmm. There are some high school students who don't take it, either because they're taking the ACT only,
right,
or they're not college bound,
right,
or they don't think they're going to go to college, so they're not taking the SAT right now. Mm-hmm. So that means that it's not a perfectly applicable sample compared to the real population of American high school students. So that's why I think the SAT user percentile is a little skewed, because it's a self-selecting group. The nationally representative sample percentile is compared to all students in the United States, and it includes those students who are choosing not to take the SAT. So I think that's probably a little bit more accurate, and it does line up with what we'd expect as 1,000 being the median score.
right.
So I think that one is a little bit more accurate.
Okay.
Right next to the total score, off to the side, a little bit smaller, so you don't notice it as much, are the essay scores. Interestingly, the thing that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes with Wanda, the section scores are more important in my opinion, but let's talk about the essay scores for a second. Now I know that as a college counselor, you've worked with students who are applying, you've talked about their scores for years. Recently, how do you feel about the essay scores?
Again, I don't really put too much weight on the essay scores. I think that on the college side, when you are able to see the actual essay with the score, there may be some comparative analysis that's done between that and what the student actually submits in their application. Mm-hmm. But from the college counseling perspective, I don't know that there's anything in here that, I would pull out and have a sit-down conversation with a student about.
I agree completely. The essay scores as scores are far less useful. From the college counselors and college admissions officers who I know, they're considered as scores much less than they used to be, just like you said. Mm-hmm. That the essay itself, the writing sample, is still important because, like you just said, they do like to compare it to your prepared college application essay, which, let's be honest, many high schools across the country are having students who are juniors start working on them.
Right.
I've taught those classes. I know you have taught those classes in college application essay writing to juniors. They may be working on it all summer long. They get back their senior year and they work on it again. So that whether they apply early decision, early admission, or regular admission, they may have worked on that essay for 6 months.
Right.
So that essay should be perfect. So they like to, the college admissions officers, I mean when I say they like to compare that essay to something more extemporaneous, like the SAT essay, just in terms of the writing style, the student's voice, things like that.
Yeah.
But the scores are not important in and of themselves.
Do you think that, as there was a recent story that came out, that some of the high-flying, more competitive colleges and universities are doing away with the need to report the essay score on the SAT? Do you think that that will have an impact on whether it'll be gone altogether? This is probably a separate podcast.
No, I think it's a good question to ask right now because this is what a lot of parents are asking when they see these scores because they don't look like they mean anything. They're separate. They don't affect your total score. It's hard to say. The College Board, and this is like a statement of record, the College Board has said this. The College Board added the essay to the SAT in 2005 and the ACT followed suit the same year because colleges and universities, specifically the Ivy League schools and the University of California system, told them to do it.
Got it.
So they added the essay because colleges told them to add it. They'll keep it on the essay until colleges tell them they don't want it. That's what's going to happen, if it happens.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing through the grapevine is that while colleges are more and more ignoring the score, they still want to see the essay. Because what happens is, even though you, as a parent or student, when you get your score report, you might not have your essay, and I have seen score reports come with a scan of your essay. This sample one does not come with a scan of an essay if you download it. But I've seen parents and students bring their actual, in the mail, from the College Board score report in with a scan of their essay, and they see it in their own handwriting, and of course, the students are always horrified that mom and dad saw their handwriting. Colleges get the same thing. They get a copy of the essay in the student's handwriting. Not typed up, not transcribed, in the student's handwriting. So colleges still get the essay. So I think so long as colleges feel that it's valuable to have that extemporaneous, on-the-spot essay writing sample, they'll continue to support the College Board and the ACT people having an essay on the test.
Got it.
That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah. I think there's a handful of colleges that still require
Right.
scores. There's not a ton.
No, in the last 2 years, a lot of them have gone to, we want the essay, we don't care about the scores.
Right.
That model.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so specifically this essay, you'll notice how there's 3 separate scores. There's a reading score, an analysis score, and a writing score. They give you the scale of 2 to 8, 2 being the lowest score, 8 being the highest. Therefore, 5 is the median. This sample essay, I'm a Good Student's score report shows that she got a 4.44, so that's a below average essay. And when I have a student who does the essay, and again, keep in mind that both for the SAT and ACT, the essay is optional. So when the student takes the essay, if they got a score like this, I don't know about what you would say, but I would say take the essay again.
Right.
Work on it, get at least 5s, again, because the score is the most important part, but you do want to write an essay that is good, and this score is feedback.
Mm-hmm.
It's valuable for feedback.
Right.
Yeah. So if you want to know a little bit more about what the 3 different metrics, reading, analysis, and writing mean, there's going to be a separate series of videos, either with myself or some of our other hosts like Nikhil or Neil, where we're going to go into instruction, which includes understanding what those mean. Below that, we have the section scores, and this is really more important than it looks because it's so tiny on here, but it's super important because we're going to talk about something called super scoring in just a second. In this instance, I'm a Good, got a 490 in the English score, and of course, they don't call it English, they call it evidence-based reading and writing score. Reading and writing, that's English. And So we just call it the English score. And I'm a Good got a score of 520 in math. Now, before we go into what the percentiles are or other information that you might see on the score report, as a college counselor, what do you think about these individual scores?
Again, I think it signifies, similar to the total score, that there's definitely room for improvement. Obviously, I'm a Good is better at math, at least for the purposes of this particular exam. But the scores are probably relatively average. I don't think that there's anything, with the 490, 520 that jumps out as, this kid knocked it out of the park.
Right.
But I do think that the scores are reasonable. And given the 10-10 total, thinking about a particular student and their GPA, you would still be certainly admissible to many institutions with a 10-10 and a 490, 520 breakdown.
One thing to be aware of, that I'm a Good is probably going to take the SAT again. This is, the May of her junior year. She's got some tests in the summer and fall that she can take before her applications are due. But let's pretend for a second that she takes the test again in August. She scores the exact same 520 on her math, but improves her, in fact, I apologize, she goes down 10 points to a 510 in math, but improves her English score to a 530. What would happen, instead of the colleges to which she's applying taking her total score from that testing versus this testing, they would take the better math score from this testing and the better English score from the second testing and create this fake score that's called a super score. It's results from real tests, but separate tests. And this is done, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, this is done in my observation, both to help the student, but also to make the college look good, because it makes the scores look better overall if they take the better score from different testings.
Yeah.
Have you heard something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. The higher the scores, everybody wins.
Yeah. So if you look at this, if you've downloaded this sample SAT score report from the College Board website, you might notice that, again, they have percentiles, and you might notice also that they have some color-coded marks to the right of the scores. They have a green check mark, or a green circle with a white check mark in it, and it says you've met the benchmark for the English score of 490. Yet, the math score of 520, which is 30 points higher, it's a higher score, they have a yellow circle with an exclamation point, which says you've scored below the benchmark. So even though the math score is higher, it doesn't meet the benchmark, whatever that is. And the benchmark...
right here, the benchmark score.
Yeah, off to the right, they give you actually the national benchmark scores. So basically what they're saying is that on average, they expect American high school students to score higher in math than in English. That's interesting. So that's based on their internal data, and that's something that they don't share generally. But they do have like an explanation of it here, but where they come up with that is probably based on the numbers they're seeing from actual scores.
Right.
So that's interesting that even though both in terms of percentile and actual score, I'm a Good scored 30 points higher in math, she didn't hit the benchmark. That's interesting.
That is interesting. That seems to be a little bit high, no?
Again...
Well, I would be an average, so I guess it's
right.
not, yeah.
Right, and again, if you add up the two benchmarks, 530 and 470, that reaches 1,000.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it just has to do with the focus on STEM over the last 15 years, that math scores would go up. I mean, and again, if you're listening at home and you don't know what STEM is, that's science, technology, engineering, and math, and a lot of public school systems and private schools have put a lot of focus on those skills for various reasons over the last 15 years. So that's, in my opinion, the most important information on the score report. Your section scores and your total score. And if you care, just as feedback in case you want to take the essay again, your essay scores. Now below that, we're going to see some more scores that people question. Like, we could theoretically end the podcast right now because we've talked about the important stuff. But I don't want to do that because, again, the whole point is, how do I read this document? And if you're listening at home and hearing me holding up the paper, how do I read this document? So let's kind of dive a little deeper into some more of the other numbers so you know what they are, even though, and I think, Wanda, you'll agree with me, they're not super important for your purposes. You're not going to put them on your application, and colleges don't tend to look at them, but they do provide more context.
Yes, agreed.
So beneath that, we see the sub-test scores, the reading score, the writing and language score, and the math score. So this math score, I want to go to that one first just because it's a single score. It's basically the raw score of how many questions you got right versus wrong. Mm-hmm. And you'll notice that it is literally half the total score. And that's pretty much comparable how they're related. So they should be related. On the other hand, the reading score and the writing and language score are your individual scores on those sections. The reading section and the writing and language section. So we talked about how I'm a good got a 490 in the English. You'll notice that her reading score is a 22 on this sample score report, and her writing and language score is a 27. So that means that she did noticeably better on the writing and language section, which is the grammar skills section, than she did on the reading. And that's why I want you to look at this, because it'll help a student recognize, oh, the reason I scored what I did on the English is because my reading needs work. Not that, and again, this is not saying that I'm a good who's an 11th grader theoretically can't read. Of course she can read. She did well enough on the SAT. But her skills in reading critically and understanding how to defeat the puzzles on the SAT show that needs some work.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, I think there's good information in here, but I don't think that students or families or even counselors sometimes take the time to sit with a student and really dissect what this means.
Yeah.
Particularly, I think it would be helpful if a student is going to take the exam again, mm-hmm. so that you can forward plan on, what areas to focus on while you're taking the test to increase your scores a little bit.
Absolutely. I would say these scores are more diagnostic than actually useful for applications.
Right.
So that way you could diagnose, I need more work in reading than I need in grammar. Even though the grammar still, it's a 27, it's not the highest score possible, I could work on that as well, but more work is needed in reading.
Correct.
All right. Beneath that you have the cross-test scores. Again, the print is getting smaller as it becomes less and less important. I mean, that's just my interpretation, but it is getting smaller on this sample score report. There are 2 cross-test scores, analysis in history, social studies, and analysis in science. And I got to tell you, these are new to the SAT starting in 2016, and it's more information that the College Board provides, but I don't think this is very important. This is kind of their way of competing with the ACT.
Right.
That's just really what it is. As a test prep teacher, I don't have any response to these numbers. They don't mean anything, and I wouldn't have any prescriptive plan to address these in instruction.
Yeah, again, that's the first thing that I thought about when I saw this, was that it's like a clear indication that that was an add-on simply because the ACT has something that's very similar.
Yeah. And then as you get beneath that, you see sub-scores. They're on a scale of 1 to 15. And these are different topics within the reading, grammar, and math sections. Command of evidence, words in context, expression of ideas, standard English conventions. Those are all sub-topics within the different English sections. Heart of algebra, problem solving, advanced math are all topics within the math. And again, they're not very important. Colleges don't necessarily look at these numbers for admission. But again, they might be diagnostic. If your algebra score and your problem solving and data analysis scores are very different, you might say, I need more algebra work, or I need more work in statistics. But in this particular instance on I'm a Good's report, they're all relatively similar. So they're not giving me really useful information.
Right. And they seem to be pretty average given the range.
Yeah. So again, the smaller it is, the less useful it looks, it seems. So that's the front. On the back is something that's pretty interesting, and I do want to bring this up because I get a lot of questions about this, and I think you probably do too, which is, does it matter if I send my scores, and will the colleges that I'm applying to, will they see my old bad scores? I hear that a lot.
Yes, that's a question that we get often.
And so again, I'm going to hold the paper up, and hopefully our delightful editor will put it up on the screen so you can look at this side of the page, and those are listening at home, you can again download this from the College Board website and look at this. So I'm a Good apparently has taken the SAT one time and it's listed here on her SAT summary of scores. And you'll see that there's 5 blank spaces. So on this single report, they'll show you up to 6 scores. I don't know a lot of students who take the SAT 6 times.
I've never worked with a student who's taken the SAT 6 times.
In fact, in my experience, most students take it 2, 3, sometimes 4 times.
Right.
And if you're really obsessive about it, like, someone who's wearing blue Argyle on a podcast in March, you might have taken the SAT 5 times. For those of you listening at home, I just waved at the camera, because that's me. I took it 5 times back in the day because I wanted to achieve a particular score for the school. That was my top choice. So Ima Good has taken the test once, and it shows her scores. It also has 6 spaces for the old SAT that was administered before March of 2016. And unsurprisingly, as a high school junior, Ima Good has not taken the old SAT because that would have been 2 years ago, and she would have been in 9th grade. So it also shows something interesting. Ima Good took the SAT subject tests in November of 2016, which is an interesting time to take the subject tests, in my opinion. According to this score report, she took 3 subject tests, Japanese with listening, one of the less common subject tests, chemistry, a medium common one, and a very common one, literature. And it has her scores on here. So basically, every time you take either an SAT or an SAT subject test, and you get scores, all your previous scores are going to be on here.
That's great for a student or for anybody, just so that you can have a easy way to compare your test scores, across all of the tests that you've taken section by section. I think that's really helpful.
I agree. Now, one of the big concerns that a lot of students tell me is, or mention to me is, oh no, I don't want colleges to see my old scores. They're going to hold it against me. I don't think that's true. What are your thoughts?
I don't know that colleges will hold it against you, but I do think that if you have an SAT test where you may have scored significantly low in math one sitting, and then you increase your score by like 200, 300 points the next time, I think that there's just some room for pause for the admissions counselor. But I don't think that it's a situation where you wouldn't be accepted into a university or a college because there's been a significant jump or a significant dip.
That covers it all. If you have any additional questions, we can do more videos and podcast episodes on advanced placement. So please leave any questions or comments for the videos on YouTube in the comment section below the video. For the podcast, you can leave comments on iTunes, Anchor, any of the other services where we have our episodes. I know we just launched the first 8 episodes a few days ago, and I know they're up on iTunes and the iTunes podcast app on iOS devices and the Anchor service, and we're getting them on Google Play and Spotify shortly, so that they will be there soon. So please feel free to subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube video channel, and leave us comments, leave us ratings, share, tweet, Facebook post, Snapchat about us if you really want to, although I will not see it because I don't get Snapchat. I mean, that's the one area where I'm old, is Snapchat. Everywhere else I'm young. With Twitter, I'm a 13-year-old right away. I'm with Twitter. I'm on, right there. So thank you so much for listening and or watching, or both if you really love us. And as always, let's keep learning.